Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon. As today we'll learn about the REST API best practices with a sample example. So I'll go through the few of the examples and I have also noted down the few of the points here which we generally follow. There is no hard and fast rule. There is some changes can be done according to the projects as well, and there is according to the how you want to develop. But generally we have a few of the rules which we generally follow. So I'll try to cover them in this video. So let's see one by one these points and how it can be added into your REST APIs or maybe Spring Boot applications where you are writing your REST APIs. So let's see the examples. So first and foremost important thing is like how you configure or how you organize your project structure. So if you look at this project structure, generally I follow this project structure config, controller, exception, model, repository, service, and the utility. This package name itself tells you that what functionality or what type of a code is going to be inside that package. So if you look at the config, I have a Swagger config. If you look at the controller, I have only controllers, exceptions, and then all the models like domain objects and repositories and the service and IMPLs. So these are the packages I have and respective code as well. So package structure is very important in terms of when you are knowledge transferring or somebody new person comes or anybody who's going to read this code and enhance this code, this becomes very important. And the next step is like I generally suggest everyone to have your Swagger config for your application so that this will give you the overview of all your REST controllers and with all the methods and everything. I have made a detailed video about the Swagger config, so you can refer to that videos. And next come to the when you're writing any of the controllers. So let's assume that you are writing a controller related to user actions or CRUD operations related to user. The first and foremost thing, like you have to have the Java doc generated for that, the comments like single line comments or multi-line comments. So you can see these comments are very important to understand what type of class it is and what it does exactly. So comments, all the Java doc comments for all the methods and everything, you just need to add for each and every method which you write. That is really a good practice, and it gives a very much high level information about what that method does. If you see this, all the comments are added. This is for just an example purpose. I made these changes and I'm just explaining it here. So I given all the explanation here, what the class does and what the method does, each and everything. You can see that. Now next comes to the REST APIs is like your path. What your path tells everything to a method or everything, or how you access these APIs. So this is my user controller. So it clearly tells that all the actions or all the operations related to user I'm going to add it here. So I just call it as a user controller. And the request mapping you should add because it will tells any of the UI person, if somebody else is a UI person who is developing the UI code. So when /user tells, he understand that yes, any user related CRUD operation or information I need to fetch from any of the API, that will start from the /users, because this is the distinction we make between the different paths or different controllers what we have. Suppose if you have a like login controller, so I'll generally make it as a /login. So always use plurals here, users, like you are dealing with the site or a group, something like that. So that's why you use like a users like stocks or anything it's possible. So give a meaningful name there so that anybody can understand there. And the next one is like when you're defining each method or each API or operations, when you give a clear path to it, subpath I can call, maybe a base path or maybe extended path. So here I call it is called as a base path, here it is an extended path. See, when I say this all, so what it's like /user /all means, so yes, you are getting a users and all the users. So it's a clear, it's a normal English so that any person, non-technical person also can read this from your Swagger or maybe the from code as well. So if you see it here, for the post mapping I'm using is create. So if you see it, for the get mapping for a fetch, and I'm using a fetch /user ID. For the delete I'm using like, for the update I'm using like a update user and the update, and for the delete same as the delete and the email. So always remember what all the return type and what all the mapping you are going to have, what all the type of the request you are going to send. So this has to be very carefully defined, because like while creating you should have a post, at least some of the get you can have, and you can have a put for the update or maybe post as well, or a patch as well, and delete for a delete mapping as well. So this itself clearly tell you that what you are performing and what is the path for that. So it generally gives yes user slash delete slash email is my path variable, so I need to provide the email as an input there. So if you use slash as a update, so you can see that update it here. So you can generally see all this information. It clearly explains any of the user that what you are doing, how you are doing, and then what is the information you are passing to the each method as a parameter, whether it is a body request body, whether it is a parameter, whether it is a normal path variable, whether it's a request variable. So all this can be defined here very clearly. So while defining these parameters, so you just need to make sure that how you're defining and everything. So this is a user ID, I'm defining it here as a path variable. Sometimes you might need to request variable also, you can add it. It's based on how you want to define that and what is the usage of that in terms of in your logic and everything. So and all the comments also you can see what its parameter takes and what return type it takes is all defined here. So it gives a clear information for any users to how you create your APIs and how you define your parameters and what type of methods or what type of request types you are going to use it. And the one more important thing is here, like always use response entities for your return type, so that you can return a proper error messages or a proper return type or a HTTP code, so that UI can handle it very easily. If you generally just return a user or just return a void or a string, something like that, right? So UI has to have their custom messages for defined everything or code, so that what you can do is like you can just return a code and it will easily identified by the UI code, so that yes, if we return a 200 it's a success, if it's return a 401 it's not authorized, or if something, all those things like you can define it here. So in the controller you see it's a clear simple code for everything. It's just taking your input and it's sending it to your service and service IMPL. All the information you can see it here. So let us see the what is the service IMPL. I'm just using it here. So if you see service IMPL, you can just define all your AutoWire configurations, everything at the start along with the loggers as well. And if you see, if anything, like for example I'm just saving a user, it's a save user I given, so always try to give a meaningful method names so that everybody can understand what it method does. It's just a normal plain English you can use. So I'm passing a user, the email is a mandatory. So when I say email is a mandatory, I check for email. If email is not there, then I send it as a bad request. So bad request, it sends back, go back to the my controller and it tells me that yes, this I'm trying to create and it sent me a bad request, and UI knows that yes, there is something wrong with my request. Then he has to go back and check what is the wrong with that. If you look at the logs also, it will tell why it is the bad request and what all the information it has generally. So you can get it all the information there. So if you see, I just added a few of the set here and I just created it using a save user. So once it is successful, it just sends back it's created and it's a successful, it's a 200. So those sending those response entities are very important. So this is as I said, this is not a hard and fast rule, but these are the general best practices we need to follow, so that this will give a uniform or organized way of developing these REST APIs, and your UI will not change based on your request type. So it just gives you the code and what is the request type, you can pass it over there. So if you see, if I'm trying to find a user here but user is not found, I'm just directly sending as not found. My status code will be not found there. So you can just see the other examples, like I'm just updating or deleting a user. If deleted, I just sending it as a response entity code. Okay, so this is just I'm hard coded here, but you should have it as a constants. So you can just use those constants basically whenever there is a kind of a text or other things which we see it. See, I am using some of the constants. See, I created a constants as a separate static classes over there, so I am fetching this values from there. So if you can see that here I created in the utility, so utility class has some of the constants, and I have created one of the utility class as a date formatter. So you can just create which is frequently used and common as a utility classes over there. So you can use it at that will be created only one time at the start, and you can just reuse those things as per the static clause and everything. So this is the basic things of we need to consider while creating the REST APIs, request response, and how it is mapped, everything. And also I'll just give a brief about the loggers, but I'll make another video for loggers and as well as the exception handling. So always make sure that you have a proper loggers. So you can see that logger.info, I've just added like I'm an user controller and I'm in a method of get all users. If you come to the service IMPL, if you see I'm in a service IMPL and get all users I am that. So when you are in some kind of a distributed system or a multiple services, when you're this will be very easy to track, because this will be tracked based on your the timing and everything. So you can see that when it is called which method and what it's execute first and which one executed next. So that will be, so as I said, I'll make a different video for loggers itself, because logger itself is a big topic to cover. So I'll try to make a different video for logger and exception handling. So yep, these are all the basic. So you can see all the values and everything, parameters, so request body and valid, so it has to match all the basic criteria here. So I meant it as like these are the not blank, these are the indexed and everything. So I'm using is Lombok, so it will automatically create for your getter setter. So this is the things you can define it here, and when you say it's a request body is valid, it will validate for all the mandatory fields which you defined in the user class. So this is how you should define all those information. Let me see if other topics I missed anywhere here. So yes, proper project structure, documentation with Java docs. Yes, keep a base path is meaningful and readable. Yes, example like /users, /docs, this should be very clear, and extended path should be very clear. As I said, like user/create, user/delete, which I've given it as. Yes, we should use a response entity to return a proper HTTP code messages, and we should have a proper utility classes whenever it is required. And generally we use a JSON as a request response, retrieving the data as well for sending and retrieving the data, because XML is generally nowadays is less used, so JSON is a preferred format. And avoid using HTTP methods, get, put. Okay, this is more or less like what I'm saying is here. So instead of fetch and everything, so here you should not have like a get like a get user ID, get everything. That mapping should not be there. So you try to avoid these basic HTTP methods as your get mapping methods. You just have a plain understandable English as your paths, and then you can define those methods as per your functionality over there. And yes, proper error handling should be there. I'll make another video for all error handling and everything. And also you can have a proper versioning in your extended path like /user, v1 and create and everything. So it depends on like whenever you have a multiple versions of applications and you are modifying and you are using all the different versions at a time, so that time it will be covered. And have a proper logging. So these are the basic logging mechanism which we should use. When to use a info, when to use a debug, and then you have to configure your logging format, and then we should not log any sensitive information. So I'll make another video on this. So let us see. I'll try to make it as soon as possible along with this following video. So these are some basic important steps we should follow while we are creating a REST API, so that will help everyone. So basic idea is to, when you write this kind of a code, if any person or unknown person who's not working in your project or somewhere else, he's trying to look at the code, he'll be able to understand very easily. So that is the main idea behind it, and it's very much understandable and very much readable code, and it is maintainability is also it's very less. So you don't need to like have a different maintaining things and all those things. For that it's easily maintainable, because any new person can understand anything out of it. So that is the main idea behind it. So that's all I have for today now. So thanks all. So I'll come up with the new videos as soon as possible. Thank you.